of our fund balance. Actually, we came out at a little over $1 million surplus, so we had a variance of 2.6. So that $1 million went into the cash balance that we're now operating off this year. Went into the fund balance and the cash balance that we're using this year. Some of that, the reason why it was such a large number, the $1 million, is because there was projects that did not, end up getting completed. So the majority of what you'll see in these budget adjustments are things that were encumbered, but not actually didn't get finished, didn't get spent. So the new monies is House Bill 3834 required that all local government employees as well as state have have IT security training. And so that was an unfunded mandate. It costs us just under $4,000 to get every one of our employees and staff that has the computers to get them trained. Also in there is a request for $8,000 in the finance department and the police department for the entree leadership training. That's the one that if the council chooses will be pulled. We also have in there the NIBRS grant. That was money that was granted last year, and it's just an offset. The revenue coming in, the expenditures going out are net zero. We also have an Edward Byrne Memorial JAG grant that was a carryover from last year. Also, again, it's for radio operability. It's a net zero, $65,000 in revenue and the same in expense. One of the new monies is $41,000 for the Green Ribbon Grant Project Management Contract. This contract was previously approved by council. I did the budget adjustment last quarter for the actual grant itself. It's a $400,000 grant, but part of the agreement was that we had to pay for the project management ourselves, so I missed getting that part in. Because we had a vacancy for our building official and we hired a contractor through SGR, I moved $18,202 from salaries to cover the outside professional services that we contracted. The fire truck that we approved last year at $1.2 million, we did not get all of that spent. If you remember, that fire truck was delivered after the fiscal year began, so we are carrying over $382,000 for that. The Laserfish onboarding that was approved last year, we've carried that over for $73,000. Our municipal court software, obviously we went live October 1st, a few days before I think, and so we still have expenditures that carried over to this year. There's some maintenance of $8,400 and some software purchase, $24,400. The right-of-way maintenance, which has to do with streets, not all of that money was spent last year, so we carried it over because we obviously need street money of $25,000. There was the vehicles in the police department. There was vehicles and equipment that we did lease purchases on last year. We had some of the equipment was not completely purchased and installed before the end of the fiscal year, so we carried over $54,000 for that. I don't know what these are, but the police can probably tell you. OPS core helmets, this is part of our interagency agreement. That money was encumbered last year, and it just didn't get spent until after the fiscal year. The goods were not delivered prior to the fiscal year end. So that was $10,000. Same thing for some computer supplies. There were some computers that were ordered. There were some issues with them that they had to get back ordered, so they weren't actually delivered until after the fiscal year. It was about less than $2,000. Some rifle armor plates, same thing. They were ordered but did not appear until after the fiscal year, just under $3,000. We have some concrete that we had encumbered in the parks for $3,300. The water heater here at City Hall, they did not actually get it replaced until after the fiscal year started at $2,500. The Inco 10 migration, which we are still fixing to do our utility billing next week, so that wasn't completed by the end of fiscal year. So we had carried over $20,000, and because we started in December, we had to add the other 23.5 of the original 43.5 to carry it over. And then we included from the damage that we had to our public safety building. This is new, but it's a wash. We had insurance proceeds. This is just the first installment of the proceeds of $252,000, and then we applied that toward the building improvements for the roof and some of the other things which are ongoing. In the utility fund, we're actually reducing the expenditures such that we have revenues over our expenditures of $552,000. Next page. So if you'll look at one of the handouts that I included, if you'll notice the changes on the estimated cash balances, we were anticipating to end the year with 1.3, and then with the proposed budget it'll be 1.8. Part of that is because we had some savings last year which fed into our fund balance. But the reason why you're seeing the big reduction is because on the east side sewer, we had a budget of just under $17 million. We anticipated we were going to spend $1.1 million. As it was, the project moved along a little bit quicker, so we ended up spending 1.7. So we are reducing that budget this year so we don't overspend the whole project. The other things in the utility fund is there was, for equipment maintenance at the treatment plant, there was $218,000 that was encumbered. It did not get completed until this fiscal year, so we're carrying that over. There was a pipe inspection that was encumbered for $3,200 that we're carrying over. There is some testing that was encumbered for $3,400 we're carrying over, and then the aerator rehab for $16,717 we're also carrying that over. Also on our CDBG grant, that's the Dodge Lennox Fairfax, we had to adjust that. We're increasing the revenue and reducing some of the expenditures, and that's just the same thing. It's just we anticipated and didn't hit the mark, and so we're correcting the grant so we don't overspend. In our landfill, the master plan, there was $4,000 of that was still encumbered that had not been finished being spent. Some of it's already been spent this year for $4,030. In our airport fund, these are our FAA grants that are run through TxDOT. It's the same thing. We do the best we can to estimate how it's going to be, and then we have to true up the numbers at the end of the year. For our stormwater drainage, the CDBG GLO grant, same thing. We're accounting for the revenues and expenditures from last year differing than what we anticipated. And then we also carried over the spring bouquet engineering for $10,948 that wasn't completed by the end of the fiscal year. In our hot funds, I missed this on the last budget adjustments where I want to say it was like October 1st or 2nd. It was after we'd already approved the budget and started the fiscal year. The council approved for the Fine Arts Council to receive $40,500 from the undesignated funds, and then the museum to get $82,677. So that's to move those funds to appropriate was allotted to them. It's a net zero. For our capital projects, there was $47,288 in the street that we had dedicated. I think it was it was a little over $1 million last year that didn't actually get spent. So we're carrying that over to increase for this year to spend. And then the bond that we just issued, we are accounting for it, showing the revenues and all the expenditures that were associated with it. And that's it. Are there any questions? I know it's a lot, and I'm sorry, but that's what happens when you're dealing with projects.
Well, if there are none from the committee, I do want to solicit some input from the committee and the rest of the council on one of the discretionary spending at the top. If you go back to the budget adjustment register at the very top, there was a request for two $8,000 hits there for the on-trade leadership, and I would simply solicit input from the committee and council on what you think there.
I'll give you some input, if you don't mind.
Okay.
One is, this whole idea of going to Dave Ramsey has been mine from the get-go. I don't know that we need to send them to second and third and fourth ones, but, you know, I think it's good for staff to have an opportunity. He gives you a different perspective, and one of the things we've done is borrow the money, and he talks about how to operate, how to come up with a budget for your business, he talks about rewarding employees. The Entre Leadership is a great conference. I've been to it twice, and it's a tremendous conference. Financially speaking, it's a lot of money. The difference is, we're on an accrual basis of accounting, and this is spending, you know, paying for something that's gonna happen after October 1st. And so technically, we can just move the money back next year and let next year pay for it. So it wouldn't come out of this year's budget. It is a $16,000 request though, going forward. That's just my 2 cents worth, 2.5 cents. I gave him 2 cents worth. 2 bits or whatever that is.
Anybody else have comment there? I'll just say that this is, again, in the overall scheme of things, $16,000 in a $25 million budget is not that big a deal. I would question whether someone else might question what it looks like, given what we've just come through. And so then my question would be, is this something that could be postponed until next year?
Which I think it is already.
It's in November.
October.
November. So it'd actually be paid for out of this year's budget. We can accrue the money.
So we would just
expense.
need to talk about it. It would be a budget item on the upcoming budget.
Actually, we need direction tonight because it is a high-demand course and it needs to be paid for. However, I will answer Mr. McClinton's question. I agree with the mayor. It is a very important perspective. I've been to the week-long course that we're talking about. However, given COVID, given our state of not knowing what our sales tax is going to look like, we've gotten 1 month that has been impacted by COVID. Excuse me. I would respectfully recommend that we delay this for a year until 2021 to be able to normalize our revenues. One of the things that you'll see when we propose the budget is a reduced amount for in-person training. There'll still be some in the budget, but there'll be a reduced amount, and I think this is one that could be postponed.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else have input on that? Go ahead.
For 16,000, who goes? How many people?
That would be the chief of police and the finance director. That's 2.
So it's $8,000 a person.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Mayor?
One of the issues, if you'll notice, I'm trying to think of who's on council. You were on council when we started this. I think you're the only one when we first started, you went
First,
first.
yeah.
And one of the things we have seen, we talked about changing perspective and how we do business. And one of the things you hear now in council meetings more often and in private conversations is, we're running this like a business now. And I think that perspective, matter of fact, I would go back and quote the city manager and get he went kicking and screaming to the first class. And shows up, I think you register on Sunday or Saturday night actually. And on the first day, on Monday, I got a text message from him, and I think the message was something, you can correct me if I'm wrong, something to the effect of, this has transformed my life. I've never been through anything like this in all my professional years.
And that was by noon Monday.
That's by noon Monday. That's how much it changes. Are you going to learn any techniques? Are you going to learn finance and how to borrow money? I said, no, you're not. She knows as much as they're going to teach her. It's a perspective of how you look at running your operation. And it goes all the way from revenue to expenses. It deals with personnel. It deals with personal goal setting, how to set a goal, how to do evaluations. It has all kinds of stuff. And because of that, I respectfully request that we keep the money in there. And if it's for particularly because of this year, we can pay for it, reimburse this year's, out of next year's budget when it happens, because we are on a accrual basis, and they're asking for cash to be spent.
And Mr. McClinton, I would be excited about that if we could do that.
Yeah, I have no problem with doing this. I think it's a great program. I just, again, my question was just the optics.
Well, I'd
of
say
it.
in front of anybody, because I've been, like I said, I've been twice. And just like the city manager said, when he sent me that text message, I laughed because I sent my boss a text message the first day. And I said, this is transforming. It will transform who you are and how you what kind of employee you are, what kind of a leader you are, how you set vision, how you know, it talks about fear. It talks about bad decisions it helps you decide what bad decisions you've made, what would you do differently, how would you make that decision. And it's in front of a guy who probably, when it comes to personal finance, there's nobody better than him. I remember I was very fortunate. My boss spent an extra several $1,000s for me to have dinner with him that night. And so you're supposed to come with all these questions. I had 25 questions listed. And the very first question I said was, I just got elected to city council. Give me one piece of advice. And I thought he was going to take a second or give a long description. He said, that's an easy one. Quit borrowing money. Live off your budget. Quit borrowing money. He said, that's a simple one. That's government. Well, then the next 6 days, I saw where that happened, taking my personal finances and doing the same thing. And all of y'all have heard me talk about borrowing money, budgeting, etc. And I'll tell you, it'll transform. Now, there's nobody, I'm going to tell you, everybody on this council, you haven't heard this yet, Justin, but I'll be her #1 ally. She's the greatest thing ever came to Stephenville, Texas, in city council. Because what she does for us, I embarrass her all the time when she gets mad at me later. But she's a smart girl. You know, when we interviewed her, were you in the room? I can't remember who was in the room. Before she left, I think it was Bridges was the minister at the time. And I said, hire this lady before she gets out of the building. And you and I talked, and we came up with some more money to help get her. Well, we're not going to learn anything accounting-wise. It may change how she operates as a city employee.
Oh, I
And I didn't
hope
mean
not.
to use the word girl. That's not, inappropriate. I apologize if I did.
Mr. McClinton?
Yes, sir.
Another bit of personal testimony. When I did agree to go, I think I also told the mayor that we have a $26 million budget. I don't know that we can afford that many envelopes, which is, Dave Ramsey is known for his envelopes. This is a completely different approach to the Dave Ramsey methods. He does, I think, 4 hours on the financial piece part of this, but it goes in so much in depth, and he has leadership people that you read about, Patrick Lencioni, Simon Sinek. Those guys do the leadership parts of it. I mean, true visionaries in leadership, not just business leadership, but in government leadership as well. I mean, I got goosebumps talking about it right now.
I remember standing at the Alamo the night next to last night, and we stood there with that fake piece of brass where, supposedly Travis drew the lines, everybody step across or whatever. And he talked about leadership and willingness to step across that line, what it takes to make that decision and the commitment, et cetera. It will change your life. It really will. Now, she didn't want to go. Told her I was going to make her go anyway. I said if I had to pay for it, but I really think it'll change who they are. I really do. So I would hope we keep that in the budget. If not, we'll find it. They have 2 of them a year. Or are they down to 1?
No, they have, actually that class, yes, it's down to 1.
Okay. There's 2 when I was there.
Yes, sir.
So this will require to do the budget adjustments will require an ordinance at a later council meeting. What we're looking for here tonight is just a recommendation for the council as presented with changes, whatever the pleasure of the committee is.
I don't know, kind of conflicted about it. He said, let's skip it, and then he sort of said, go for it. So, I mean.
Well, I would rather go for it.
Oh, of course. I don't know.
just three of us.
Just you three boys.
I can't make the motion.
I don't know, guys, I just have a hard time spending that amount of money when we're making cuts, and we're gonna have to make cuts elsewhere, and that's my hardest problem with it. It's my hardest problem with Splashville. I mean, I think we need to do something for the kids too, but we're spending 15 grand a week, and we know we're gonna lose on it, and when do I say I'm physically smart about what we're spending our money on? And I understand that it is a small spec in a $25 million budget, but those small specs add up when you continue to do things, so that's my explanation. So we need something no matter what with that.
We gotta have something. Here's the one thing, and I will tell you, Brandon, because I've thought about this since we got this information. I believe that the chief is gonna benefit out of this greatly. That's where I think the value in this is for Chief Harris, to look at things, because Monica, she can look at things, we've talked enough I know she looks at it from the public side, she also can look at it from the private side, from her husband's business operation and stuff like that. So she can kind of see it from both sides. But I'm going to bet that Chief Harris probably hasn't. And I think the value in this is really for him to look with fresh eyes at his budget, which is something we've been talking about for a while now. I think that's where the value in this lies, to me. And Monica doesn't want to go. She's already said.
She's gonna go on evaluation if y'all don't fund it. She's gonna get bad eval.
Mr. Huckabee, to clear up my comments, like you, I'm very conflicted. We are going to have to face some very difficult challenges in the next several months. However, I really believe in this training. I really believe that it will benefit our community. I really believe it will benefit our future budget processes. I believe in it so much that I was willing to put it off a year. If we can do it this year, I would appreciate it. I think Chief Harris would appreciate it. I think at the end of the day, Monica would appreciate it. That's the reason that I said we could put it off a year is because I do understand being conflicted over this, and I can't understand the optics of it. But by the same token, taking the mayor's comments into consideration, this is not a significant percentage of our budget, and I think it will reap benefits more than the cost.
Monica, the carryover, so really the top part here, the adjustments, those are, the majority of that was encumbered, it just wasn't recorded initially?
So anytime we go to make a purchase that's over $2,500, we encumber it. If the good or service is not provided by the end of the fiscal year, then there is no accounts payable or expense to record, but that encumbrance is still on the books because we're still obligated as long as they provide the good or service. So these are things that were encumbered, but the good or service wasn't provided until the next fiscal year. So we paid for them. Some of them are still pending, because we're still buying equipment for the fire truck and stuff. And so the expense will actually show up in this year, and the encumbrance clears this year.
Okay.
So,
all right. The encumbrance is just recorded in the fund balance, so.
right. So the money that didn't get spent went down to fund balance, in an unrestricted, basically, or I guess it would have been
It was,
restricted for
Right.
committed.
make the motion to approve it
As presented.
as presented.
You want it, Brandon? Okay, I'll do the second. And this can go forward, the council will make the decision on it. We could actually, if y'all are more comfortable, we could actually send it to the full council without a recommendation.
I just, and I go back to budget time last year, we cut training everywhere and spending $8,000 per person. It's just, it seems like a lot to me, and that's where I'm at. So we cut, I mean, that's 16,000. We bragged because we cut 20,000 out of training or 30,000 out of training. So I just, I can't get over that hurdle, so.
Well, I'll go ahead and second your deal. We'll send it along. All those in favor of sending this with a positive recommendation as presented, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no.
No.
It will move forward to the council with the positive recommendation as it's been presented. And Mr. Mayor, I think we have one other item. And I have no idea who's gonna talk about
Aye.
federal grant fund consulting firms.
I am.
Mr. Barnes is. Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. Mr. McClinton and members of the committee, this fortunately is not an action item tonight. It's to give us direction from the Finance Committee. We have been contacted by a couple of firms from Washington, D.C. that are in the business of obtaining federal competitive and discretionary grants. The grants that we get from the state of Texas are formula grants provided to the states by the federal government, and we're technically sub-grantees. The first guy talked a good game. We've only talked to one person. Or one firm. We've talked to several people. We are in the process of scheduling an additional call with another company, and we have some folks in Roger Williams' office that are providing us information for other consultants. At this point, what we're looking for is a direction as to whether this committee would prefer us to continue to pursue these companies or these individuals, or if again you feel that this is not a good use of staff time, then we'll stop. This is one of those things that we think it's a good idea, but we want direction from y'all.
Do they want it as a retainer fee or a contingency fee?
Yes, sir. It's this company is a retainer fee of about $5,000 per month.
And then they split,
Per month.
and then they split a portion of the grant proceeds?
No, sir. What they would do is they would acquire the grant, and our current grant person does the grant administration. I don't think we've gotten to that point yet with them. And each firm may be different. We just talked to one firm, and I told Mr. King that I just really felt like that we needed to get direction from the council, or from the committee.
Are those firms, do they niche out? So, I mean, do they specialize in one particular area of grants? You know?
This firm does not. This firm says, and we have not vetted this firm, but this firm says that they will pursue everything from economic development administration grants to justice grants to infrastructure grants, all at the federal level.
And they do the leads?
I'm sorry?
They do the leads, or do you have to provide the leads? Do they supply the
Identifying the
possibilities?
grants.
Yes, they're the ones that identify the grant. Leads. I'm sorry, I didn't understand leads.
They usually work for the organization that funds it now.
Yes.
Exactly.
Mr. McClinton, what we do is what this firm does is they'll work with us to look at our funding priorities, to discuss our vision moving forward for our community, and then they'll match those needs to the grants as they become available.
Do we have to be engineered out for that to happen? So, for
No, sir.
example, downtown revitalization?
No, sir.
Is that something they could pursue
Yes, sir.
in advance?
Yes, sir.
But does it, well, I I guess it's too hypothetical. I guess, does it matter if it is shovel-ready or not?
They indicated that many of the federal grants, you do not have to be shovel-ready for.
I think one of the biggest things we have to be ready for is, we keep hearing about stimulus 3. And what I hear is was it $4 trillion or something like that?
Yes.
And that, they're arguing over, do you give it to states? They're not gonna give it to states. But I think there's gonna be an infrastructure part of that. I think there'll be $1 trillion of infrastructure at some point. I don't know if these guys has any idea how to do it or not, but.
Well, that's that budget dust you've been talking about for
Yeah.
a couple of years.
Mhm.
You just want the dust. We just want to sweep up
We
the
just want the dust.
This particular firm, we've talked to Mr. Williams' office with, about, and they're not familiar with him. But Mr. Williams' chief of staff is providing us with a list of companies that they're used to working with.
Should we just have committee for direction to continue?
Just
the
direct,
process or
do
not?
we continue?
Talking.
How much time are you spending with this?
It depends, actually. It's not a priority at this point.
Is it a burden?
No, sir. Sometimes it's hard to fit it in the schedule, but if you don't have time to make the phone call, we just don't have time to make the phone call, sorry.
Well, I'm all about you guys trying to sweep up money from any and every possible source. I've been talking about that for a while. I think we should be pursuing every penny that's out there. Somehow, now, I don't know that I'm willing to spend $5,000 a month on a firm that, I mean, unless there's gotta be something for me out of that, so. But pursuing and looking at the options that are out there, I don't have a problem with it at all.
Now, we'll tell you that this individual did know that we have not received a competitive grant directly from the federal government since 2009. So he had done it at least that much research.
Was that just is that the one that everybody got for the gardens on the medians?
No, sir, that was a grant to the police department. That was a DOJ grant.
But it was almost an entitlement grant.
Brandon, you got something on that one?
I mean, we've got to be looking for those opportunities, and I think that, will they know more about them than we do sitting here in Stephenville, Texas? Yes, but where are we going to find another $60,000?
And the other firms may not be there.
Well,
They may not, but I mean, and
is this a?
there is ROI, I get it, so, I mean,
Exactly.
we've had some luck with the state, but I need a lot more information
Yeah.
about any of this before I would people. I mean, it's fine to listen. I never say no to listening to anybody for anything.
Well, I just don't. I mean, the day-to-day operations of how you carry out the council's wishes is. I feel like that's your decision, not necessarily.
Yes, sir. What we would like to do, though, moving forward, when we talk to these companies, is have a member or two of this committee also be involved. When we get a little further down the road, we're not ready quite yet, but for future discussions, we would like to have a couple of one or two members of the committee.
Always willing.
Yeah, I like the contingency idea. Let's pay them a fee based on what they get.
I thought
what they
most of
bring
them,
in.
and you may still have to split in addition to the,
Some front money
They take a
plus-
percentage of the.
Yeah.
but most of them are contingent based.
Anybody else got something you want to add to that?
There are a lot of firms out there like this. I've hired some myself in Washington. They're lobbying firms, is what they are. And it all depends on, what their background is, and the vetting is the big deal.
Absolutely.
And who they have worked with and who have they performed for. If you have got, if you've got somebody that has a great track record, with one of the senators or representatives or something, and really knows their way around, pretty good deal. I've seen some of them that are just one-person shops that are very effective, and I've seen some that are an entire law firm, that are really high priced, but maybe not as effective as the one person deal. So it's the vetting and how you go about that, Alan, that it's going to be.
Oh, absolutely.
And who they've done it. Some of the best, I mean, we were talking about, well, where do you find the list? You know, there are associations out there that put out a list of all the economic development grants, which this is a big part of it, and they put out a list of every federal economic development grant that's out there, and or that comes up, and that comes out like once a month or something like that. I'm sure that same thing happens in Department of Agriculture and all the rest of them too. So
Yes, sir.
it's having somebody there, yeah, makes a difference.
Yes, sir.
I think it would be worth pursuing at least to the next step and try to gather a little more information for us to consider, as long as it's not taking an extreme amount of Mr. Barnes' time to do that. I think it would be good information for us to have in the future, whether we elect to do it now or not. I'm hesitant to retain anybody on just a flat fee like that without some kind of performance-based fees or something that would encourage them to be more productive for us. Maybe that's the way to say it.
I think I have our marching order.
If that's satisfactory, Mr. Chair.
Absolutely. Okay. If there's no more discussion, Mr. Mayor, I will turn this back over to you. That concludes the Finance Committee meeting.
There's no other items on the agenda, so it's 5:36, we stand adjourned.